Hello all, welcome to Learn with Kastro. My name is Kastro Kiran. In this video, we are going to see how to deploy a microservices-based application using Ingress controller, which is one of the most important Kubernetes component. But before we see how to deploy the application using Ingress controller, let us understand what is meant by Ingress controller, how Ingress controller is going to help us for the production level deployments of any type of applications. It can be a monolithic application or a microservice application. But most importantly, we are going to focus on a microservice-based application. So first, let us understand what is Ingress controller and how Ingress controller is going to help us. But before that, let us see a problem statement. Suppose, let's say I have an application. Now for this application, let's say I have three services such as movie service, games service, and the songs service. Now, I want to deploy these services in the Kubernetes cluster. Now, whenever you are deploying the applications in the Kubernetes cluster, we generally use the Kubernetes services concept. In Kubernetes services, we have three different types of services. One is cluster IP, node port, and load balancer. However, cluster IP and node port are not used for the production level deployments. So what is the leftover option? We need to go with load balancer as the service type for each of the service that is available for my application. Now, how do you access these services externally? Traditionally, you might have to expose each service using load balancer as a service type. But this creates some serious issues. What is that? Suppose, let's say, I want to access movies related service. Then I have to take the load balancer URL of a movie service, and then I can access the application. So every service is having its own load balancer, which becomes highly expensive when we talk with respect to the cloud specific resources. And here you have to manage multiple DNS records because we have multiple services. And another important issue is your network becomes harder in order to maintain and scale the number of resources that we need. And there is also no central control for routing the traffic. So these are the major problems that we face when we use load balancer as the service type while we are deploying the application. So what is the solution? The solution is Ingress controller. So what is meant by Ingress controller here? In a typical way, think of it like a receptionist who decides where to send the incoming visitors. Suppose, let's say, based on the URL path or based on the host name or based on the TLS settings, Ingress controller will route the traffic to the right application that we are looking for. Suppose, let's say, an Ingress controller is a Kubernetes component that watches Ingress objects and configures a reverse proxy in order to handle routing based on the rules that we are going to specify in the Kubernetes YML file. So here we need to understand this Ingress controller in a better way. Let's say Ingress reduces the number of load balancers and simplifies the external access by exposing multiple services through a single external IP. That's the most important fact of using Ingress controller in the real-time scenarios. So to be specific or to define what is an Ingress controller is a Kubernetes component. So it is a part of Kubernetes cluster. Technically, it is a pod which is running in our cluster. And this Ingress controller will always watch our Kubernetes objects. Typically, we call them as Ingress objects, and configures a reverse proxy by using reverse proxy tools such as Nginx, Traffic, and HA proxy. And there are multiple other things which is going to handle routing based on these rules. So here, Ingress means it is something which is going to define the rules. So basically, Ingress is a Kubernetes object. Then what is an Ingress controller? Ingress controller is something which listens to the rules and implements them as per the requirement. So what are the key benefits of using an Ingress controller? Let us understand the routing types here. Generally, in real-time scenarios, we have two types of routings. One is called as port-based routing, and the second one is called as path-based routing. So what is meant by port-based routing? Suppose, let's say, you have deployed an microservice-based application in the EC2 instance, which is in the AWS cloud. Now we know that for every EC2 instance, you are going to get the public IP address, which is used to access the application. Now let's say you have deployed 3 different services in your EC2 instance. Now assume that you are having the IP addresses and you have configured each service with a different port. Let's say at port number 81, if you give the port number 81, you will be able to access the home page of the application. If you give port number 82, you will be able to access the movies page of the application. Like this, for each service, you are going to configure a different port. This is called as port-based routing. Only when you give this port number at the end of your public IP address of the instance, then only you will be able to access that particular page. Similarly, when you change the port number, you will be able to access different pages that are available for the application. This is called as port-based routing. But what is the problem with port-based routing? Every time you have to ask your end users or the application users to change the port number so that they can access that individual specific page, which is a complex process in the real-time scenarios. And to overcome these, we have another concept which is called as path-based routing. So what is meant by path-based routing? Here, let's say we have a custom domain for my application. Let's say www.kastro.com. Now, when I type www.kastro.com, I will be redirected to the home page of the application. Now, let's say in my application, I have movie service. Now, when I click on movie service, automatically it will take me to the movies page. Like that, when I click on a specific service that is available in my application, it should take me to that particular page. That is called as path-based routing. So here you will have the Ingress URL, and when you click on home page, your Ingress URL path will automatically change to Ingress URL/home. Let's say you have clicked on movies page. Your path of the Ingress URL will change to Ingress URL/movies. So like this, the path of the URL will get changed. Suppose here, let's assume you don't want to use the Ingress URL. In that case, we can also give the custom domain of my application. Suppose let's take an example of paytm.com as an application. Now, you see, when I type paytm.com, I'm able to see the home page of my application. Now, let's say I'll click on mobile recharge. When I click on mobile recharge, observe here how the path will change. So I'll click on mobile recharge. You see paytm.com/recharge. I am redirected to the recharge page of my application. Suppose let's say I'll click on electricity, and you can see my page is redirected to electricity related application. So here what is happening? Path-based routing is happening. This is the domain, and this is the path based on user, whichever they want to click, and it will be redirected to that particular page. This is called as path-based routing. And this path-based routing we can achieve by using Ingress controller. So now let us understand the types of Ingress controllers that we have. We have multiple types of Ingress controllers, but the most commonly used Ingress controller is Nginx Ingress controller, AWS ALB Ingress controller, that is a cloud specific application load balancer Ingress controller. Traffic is also another one. HA proxy and Istio gateway is also another type of Ingress controllers that we have in the market. But what are the benefits of using an Ingress controller? The key benefits of using Ingress controller is it's a cost-effective solution. Instead of having multiple AWS load balancer, you will have only one load balancer URL, which will reduce the cost in a significant way. And the second advantage of working with Ingress controller is routing will become very much simple, so that it defines all your routing rules in a one place where we will write a YML file. That YML file is called as Ingress YML file. So we'll separately write an Ingress YML file, and then we are going to configure the routing paths so that whenever user clicks on that specific routing path or a specific service, it will be routed to that particular page. And another important thing is the TLS and SSL certificates management will be quite easy so that you can secure your applications with HTTPS using certificates like, let's say, encryption and decryption. Another advantage is the path-based routing. So here, let's say when we have just seen paytm.com as the best example. When you type paytm.com, you are able to see the home page of the application. And when I have selected electricity page, automatically the path of the application or the path of the URL has got changed. So that becomes very simple when you work with Ingress controller. And the other advantage is the complete centralized access control will be there, where the rules will apply globally for authentication, rate limiting, whitelisting, and couple of other things. And Ingress controller also supports auto scaling and the load distribution. It works well with backend service like auto scaling, enabling smooth traffic flow, which enhances the application availability or high availability for the application. So these are the different benefits of working with Ingress controller. So with this concept, let us see what are we actually going to deploy as a part of this particular project. So here, let me explain you the complete workflow of this project. So firstly, I have the code in my local system. That code, we are going to send it to the GitHub repository by using a Git terminal. And once the code is available in the GitHub repository, we are going to configure this application in a CI/CD way, where we are going to use Jenkins as a CI/CD tool. And in Jenkins, we are going to configure multiple things. And finally, we are going to create the Docker images. Once the Docker images are created, we are going to push the Docker images to the Docker Hub. And once the images are available in the Docker Hub, we are going to write the Kubernetes YML files, that is service YML file, deployment YML file, and also Ingress YML file, so that we'll be able to access the application which is deployed in the Kubernetes cluster. Especially as part of this demo, I am going to use the EKS service which is available in the AWS cloud for the application deployment. Once the application is successfully deployed in the Kubernetes cluster, we are going to access the application by using Ingress URL, and then we will see whether the path-based routing is possible with the Ingress controller or not. Once the application is accessible for the end user, we are also going to do the monitoring part by using Prometheus and Grafana. And also, I'll try to keep how to work with ArgoCD so that we can have the continuous deployment using ArgoCD as a tool by using GitOps approach. This is the complete workflow that we are going to do as part of this project. Before we jump into the concept, I need to tell you one important thing, which is whenever you are working with Ingress controller, it is mandatory to install the Ingress controller explicitly in your EKS cluster or any other clusters for that matter. However, I'll be explaining you that particular step also once we configure everything, and then finally we will access the application using Ingress controller URL. Technically, I'm using the type of Ingress controller as AWS load balancer URL only. So before we do the deployment of microservices application using Ingress controller, let me show you the complete documentation that I'm going to follow in order to do this project. This documentation is available in the GitHub repository. The link to the GitHub repository is provided in the description of this video. So firstly, we are going to do the basic setup where I'm going to launch an EC2 instance, and we are going to open a couple of ports in the security group of that EC2 instance. And then we are going to install multiple things such as installing Jenkins, installing Docker, and then configuring the credentials in Jenkins, setting up the Jenkins dashboard. And finally, we are going to create the EKS cluster. And once we create the EKS cluster, we are going to create the Jenkins job. And that Jenkins job is responsible for the deployment of application using Ingress controller. And we are going to access the application using the Ingress URL. And finally, we'll be closing our video upon discussing the monitoring aspect, where we are going to cover Prometheus and Grafana in order to monitor the servers. So this is the complete setup that we are going to follow as part of this project. So, but before we do all these things, first we need to have the code in the GitHub repository. So for that, what we are going to do is we are going to create one GitHub repository in the GitHub account. So once after I create the GitHub repository, the link to the GitHub repository will be available in the description of this video. So this is my current GitHub account. So go to repositories. In the repositories, I'm going to create one new repository, and the repository name will be Microservices. Let us just keep some name to the repository. Microservices Ingress Kastro. So you can give any name to your repository. So this is the name of my GitHub repository, and I'm going to select the repository type as public repository so that you can fork it when you are practicing this particular project. And then click on create repository. So now what we are going to do is whatever code that I have in the local system, that code I am going to push it to the remote repository, which is my GitHub account. So let me show you the complete code which I am going to use as part of this project. As I said, this is a microservice based application. And in this application, we have very simple 4 microservices. One is about page. Second one is contact page, home page, that is basically the index page, and the services page. These are the 4 simple microservices which I am going to have in this particular project. And this is developed by using HTML code only, not like any kind of Java or Python kind of programming languages. So here our intention is not to bother about which programming language is used to deploy the application. Our intention is to deploy the application into the Kubernetes cluster and access it using Ingress URL. Right. So let us push the code from local repository to the remote repository. Just right click on your window and then click on show more options and go to the Git bash here so that Git bash terminal will get opened. Once the terminal is opened, first we have to initialize the Git. So in order to initialize the Git, the command is git init so that Git will get initialized. Once the initialization is done, we can check the Git status and you can see all the files, whatever are there in this repository or in the folder, they are all untracked by the Git. Now you have to tell to Git to track them. If you want to tell to Git to track the files, we need to add these files to the staging area. In order to add the files to the staging area, the command is git add dot, so that all the files will get added to the staging area. You can see all the files have been added to the staging area and we are ready to commit the files. So let us commit the files. In order to commit the files, the command is git commit -m, and then you can give the commit message. Let's say I'll just give something like Kastro -ingress -app. So any commit message can be given. This is just a commit message. It can be given anything of your convenience. So now the files have been committed. Now what we need to do, we need to send the files from the local repository to the remote repository. In order to do that, we need to configure the remote repository into the local system. In order to do that, we are going to add the remote repository by executing this particular command, which is git remote add and then repository URL. So hit enter so that remote repository has got added. Now we need to push the code to the remote repository. In order to push the code, the command is git push -u origin and then to which branch you want to push the code. Let's say I want to push the code to the master branch so that we can push the code to the master branch. Suppose if you have any other branches, let's say dev branch or the production branch or testing branch or any other branches, you can give that branch name so that the branch will get created in the remote repository, and into that branch, all your code will be available inside that particular branch. But here, before we directly push the code to the remote repository, generally Git doesn't support the password-based authentication. So for that, what we need to do is, if you want to push the code from the local repository to the remote repository, either we have to generate the personal access token or we have to go with SSH keys. Now in this video, I am going to generate the personal access token so that we can push the code from local repository to the remote repository. So how do we generate the personal access token? So if you want to generate the personal access token, you have the GitHub account, go to the settings of your GitHub account, click on settings And in the left pane, you can see developer settings. So click on developer settings, and in the developer settings, you can see personal access token, and then select tokens classic. And here we are going to generate a token. Now this token will help us to authenticate from the local repository to the remote repository. So I'm just selecting a classic as the token type. So let me enter the authenticator code. So just give me a second. I'm just going to enter the authenticator code. So now we have to give some note here. Let's say I'm just giving it as Ingress app. So anything you can give, I'm just giving it. And I'm giving the expiration as 30 days. Let it be 30 days. And I'm going to give the complete permissions for this repository. So I'm just selecting all the permissions so that we'll have complete admin level activities we can perform on this repository. So let me give all of these permissions. So just a second, I'll select all of these things. Code space, code copilot. These are all not required, but it's good if you can give all the permissions. And then click on generate token. Now the token is generated. Make sure if you reload this page, this token will no longer be available. So you have to regenerate it once again. So for that reason, make sure to copy this code or copy this token and paste it somewhere in your local system. Right. This is my token. Now what we need to do, we need to update the Git credentials here. That is what exactly I have done. First, I went to the GitHub, then developer settings, and then created a personal access token. And once I create the personal access token, we are getting the personal access token. This token, we are going to update it as part of Git credentials. So let me copy this entire thing and let me update this one particularly. So here, my GitHub username is Kastro V Kiran. In your case, you will have a different username. So whatever is the username of your GitHub account, you can provide that. And here you have to provide the token. So let me paste the token. And then let me copy this entire command and we can execute in the Git bash terminal. So let me copy this entire command and let me paste it here, and that's done. Now you are ready to push the code to the remote repository into any branch that we want. I am going to push the code to the master branch. So click enter so that the code will be pushed to the remote repository. You can see the code has been successfully pushed to the remote repository. Let's go to the GitHub account and let's go and verify whether the code is available in the remote repository or not. So this is the repository which I have just created, and you can see the complete code is available in the remote repository. In the same repository only, I'm going to upload this complete documentation, what I'm going to follow as part of this project. Right. So let us do the deployment process. So firstly, we are going to launch one Ubuntu-based EC2 instance. I'm currently in North Virginia. You can create the resources in any region of your convenience. I'm just preferring North Virginia as the region. So I'm just giving the server name as, let's say, Ingress app, okay, or Ingress server. You can give any name to your application. You can give any name to your EC2 instance, and I'm going to select the AMI as Ubuntu, and specifically I'm going to select the AMI type as Ubuntu server, which is 24.04, which is the latest one. And then I'm going to select the instance type. T2.micro instance is not suitable for this demonstration. So I'm going with T2.large instance because we are going to create the EKS cluster. We are going to install Jenkins, Docker, all of those things in the same EC2 instance. If you want, you can maintain different instances. As far as this project is concerned, I'm going to select the large instance. And in this instance only, I'm going to keep everything that is required for the deployment of application. And then key pair, if you have any existing key pair, you can select it from the drop down. Otherwise, you can create a new key pair. So here, I'm going to select the existing key pair and make sure the key pair which you are going to create, it must be having an extension as .pem, because I'm going to use MobiXterm to connect it to the server. If you are comfortable at PPK file, where you can connect to the instance using putty and puttygen, you can go with PPK. But in this video, I'm going to use .pem file where I'm going to connect to the instance using MobiXterm terminal. So that's why I have selected the existing key pair. If you don't have an existing key pair, you can create a new key pair, but make sure the file type must be .pem. And then network settings, let us go with the creation of new security group, and I'm going to select the default VPC and subnet preference I'm not going to give. Let it launch in any of the availability zone that is there. And then let me give the maximum storage, which is the 30 GB capacity. And the number of instances I need is only one instance. And then click on launch instances. With this, we are successfully launching the EC2 instance. Now, once the instance is launched, we are going to connect to that EC2 instance. So in order to connect to the EC2 instance, I'm going to use MobiXterm terminal here. So click on view all instances. Let me just refresh it. And you can see the instance is in the pending state, and you can see the name of the instance, which is Ingress server. You can give any name to your EC2 instance. There is no rule that you should give only this name. So select the instance, copy the public IP address of the instance, and then go to MobiXterm, session, SSH, and then in the place of remote host, paste the public IP address of the instance, and in the place of username, since we have launched the Ubuntu instances, for all the Ubuntu instance, the default username is Ubuntu. If you are launching a Linux instance, the default username will be EC2-user. So click on Advanced SSH Settings, use private key, and then click on this file icon. Now you have to select the PEM file which you have used while launching the EC2 instance. So I have selected the PEM file and then click on OK. With this, we are able to connect to that EC2 instance. Once you connect to the EC2 instance, we are going to update the existing packages. But before updating the existing packages, let me switch to the root user by using sudo su command. You can see I'm the root user. And let us also update the existing packages, sudo apt update -y. It is always recommended to update the existing packages whenever you connect to that EC2 instance, so that if there are any packages that are not yet updated, it will get updated. Right. Once the update is done, then I'm going to switch to the root path. Okay. So currently I'll be there in /home/Ubuntu. If you do pwd, I'm there in /home/Ubuntu. I prefer to work in the /root path. So if you want to switch to the /root path, just give cd command so that you'll be going to the /root path. And everything I'm going to work in this path only, which is /root path. Right. So with this, the instance is ready. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to open a couple of ports in the security group of this EC2 instance. So go to select the instance, go to security, and you can see the security group link here, which is Launch Wizard 5. So click on Launch Wizard 5. And here I'm going to click on Edit Inbound Rules. And here we are going to edit some rules. Let me show you what are all the rules that I'm going to use. So I'm going to open port number 25, which is used for sending emails. Technically, I'm not using the email option in this particular demonstration because I have explained that in my previous projects, which is Book My Show, Swiggy, Zomato application. But if you want, you can just open and you can configure this particular port in the Jenkins server as well, so that we can get the email notifications. So I'm just giving the SMTP port, that is 25, and I'll also go with SMTPS, okay, which is 465. And I'm going to go with the port number 80 as well, where we can access the application. And then we are going to have port number 8080 because Jenkins will run on port number 8080. And then if you want to open, let's say I'll open any port between 1000 to 10,000. You can just open this range so that if any ports are required in between, automatically it will work out. And then click on Save Rules. So these are all the different ports that are available. So make sure to open this 443 port also, which is used for accessing the application. So let me open that port. I forgot to open that one. And then 443 and then source anywhere. So let me check what are the other ports that I have. Yeah, this one also I should have opened. However, I have opened the range, which is 10,000. Let us also open it explicitly. And is there anything else? This is basically for node port, because in Kubernetes services, we have cluster IP, node port, and load balancer. Node port will have the default port in between 30,000 to 32,767. If you want, you can open this port range also, but it's not required for this project because we are not using the service type as node port. So let's click on Save Rules. Right. Once this is done, the next thing that we need to do is we are going to install Jenkins in our server. So I have just connected to the Jenkins and we are going to install Jenkins here. Now, how I'm going to install Jenkins is I'm going to create a shell file with the name called jenkins.sh. So let me paste all the commands here. So just right click and then paste all the commands. And once you paste all the commands, let me press escape:WQ to come out of the file. Now, in order to execute this shell file, we have the command which is sh space file name, or you can give the file permissions also. So directly you can execute the shell file by giving sh space file name, so that whatever commands that we have kept inside that file, all those commands will get sequentially executed. Once the commands get executed, then we can access Jenkins in the browser by using port number 8080. So let it get installed. Once they get installed, then we can verify the things that is working or not. So Jenkins has got successfully installed. So let us verify whether Jenkins is accessible from the browser or not. So let's select the instance, copy the public IP address of the instance, go to new tab, paste it, and Jenkins will run on 8080 port number. And you can see Jenkins is actually spinning up. Once Jenkins spins up, then we need to unlock the Jenkins. So if you want to unlock the Jenkins, we need to get the administrator password. This administrator password will be available in this path. So I'll just copy this entire path and Control C to come out of it and clear the screen. So cat space, paste the path. Once you paste the path, you'll be able to see the password. So copy that password and then paste it here and then click on continue, so that we'll be able to unlock the Jenkins. Now we need to install the default plugins which are suggested by Jenkins. So just click on install suggested plugins. So all the plugins which are required by default will be installed by the Jenkins. However, we have to explicitly install some additional plugins also based upon our project as well. So I'll let you know how to install and what are all the plugins that we need explicitly for this project demonstration. Now let us create the admin user. So I'm just creating the admin user, password, and then give some email ID, and then click on save and continue. With this, we are ready to access the Jenkins. So click on save and finish, and then click on start using Jenkins. So my Jenkins console is ready. So here, what Jenkins has done is Jenkins has got some update. Earlier, we used to have all the options in the left pane, but here we don't have those options anymore. Instead, we have the settings icon on the top right side. And in the settings icon option, we'll be able to see the manage Jenkins. Okay, manage Jenkins. Earlier, we used to have the manage Jenkins in the left pane itself, but now it is no longer available in the left pane. They have updated it and they have kept in the settings icon. Anyway, we'll come back to this Jenkins dashboard in some time. Now we need to install Docker as well. Why Docker? Because we are going to generate the Docker images. So in order to create the Docker images, we need Docker for that. So let me copy all these commands which are required to install Docker. So I'm just copying these commands and then go to MobiXterm terminal and I'll just create a file which is called as docker.sh. Now inside the docker.sh file, I'm going to paste all these commands which I have copied. So paste it and press escape:WQ. Now execute the docker.sh file by using sh space docker.sh. So with this, Docker is also ready, right? You can verify docker -- version so that you'll be able to see whether Docker is successfully installed or not. Let us wait till it comes. Right, you can see Docker is successfully installed. If you want to check the version of the Docker, you can do docker space -- version. You can see Docker is successfully installed. Right. So now what we can do is we are going to install some plugins. We are going to configure some credentials in the Jenkins. But before doing all these things, let us also install the kubectl, EKSCTL, AWS CLI in order to create the EKS cluster. So here you can go to the EKS service in the AWS cloud and you can directly create the cluster by using the console itself. But let's say if you don't have an access to create the cluster directly, in that case, we are going to create the cluster using CLI, which is terminal. So for that, what we are going to do is first we need to create an IAM user. So let's go and create an IAM user. So what is the reason for creating an IAM user? By default, whenever you create any kind of clusters or any kind of resources, you should not create the cluster using the root user. So it's always recommended to create the cluster using IAM user, where in real time, you may not have the direct console access. You will be getting the access as an IAM user only. So let's create one IAM user. So go to usage and then click on create user. And here I'll be giving the username as Ingress-user. You can give any username, provide user access, and then I want to create IAM user. Let it be auto-generated password only, and then click on next. And here we are going to attach some policies to the IAM user that we are going to create. So here what we'll do is we'll attach two type of policies. One is AWS managed policy, and the second one is customer managed policy also. We have to create our own policy as well. Let me show you that option also. We'll come back to this third step in some time. So this is what I'm doing now. So fourth step. So I have just created the IAM user, and we need to attach some policies to the IAM user. So for this, I'm going to give the EC2 full access, because whenever we create the cluster in the backend, it is going to create the worker nodes. So worker nodes are nothing but EC2 instances. So if you want to create EC2 instances using CLI, we need to give complete EC2 full access permissions also. And then we are going to create the VPC full access permission also, because when you create the cluster, it will create a separate virtual private cloud or VPC network in the VPC service. So for that reason, we are going to give the VPC full access also, and it will also create some IAM rules as well. So for that, we need to give IAM full access, and we can also give Amazon CNI policy, which is again for networking part. And we also have one more policy, which is a worker node policy. So these are few things that we want to give. Otherwise, you can directly give the administrator access, but in real time, it is not recommended to give the administrator access, right? So I have given EC2 full access, EKS CNI. I think I have missed out this particular policy. So let me copy this policy and let us give the EKS cluster level permissions also. So select the policy, and then worker node policy I have provided. Yeah, cloud formation, because when you are creating the cluster in the backend, it uses the cloud formation templates. So for that, we need to give the cloud formation full access also, and IAM full access also I have provided. So just click on next, and you can see the policies that I have attached to this user. Administrator access, it's not required, but if you don't want to give individually all these permissions, you can directly give the administrator access. But in real time, we never give the administrator access directly. Just for your reference, I have selected this particular policy here. And these are all the different policies that we have just attached to this IAM user. And then click on create user, so that user will get created. However, we are not going to bother about this username and password, because we'll generate the access keys and secret keys for this user in some time. And that access keys and secret keys we'll configure in the Jenkins, and we'll also configure in the EC2 instance which we are working, right? So let's go to the Ingress user, because for this user, I want to create a custom policy. So go to permissions, add permissions, create inline policy, and go to JSON, and let me delete the existing policy, and let me give the cluster level permissions, complete EKS cluster level permissions. So for this reason, I'm creating this inline policies. So let me just paste it. So let me just copy it and then paste it here. And that's done. And then click on next and give the policy name. Let's say I'll just give it as ingress-user-policy. So you can just give any name to the policy and then click on create policy. So with this, for the user which we have created, we have given total 10 permissions. 9 are AWS managed permissions, and 1 is customer managed policy, right? So with this, we have successfully created the IAM user, and for this IAM user, we have given the required permissions. Now let's generate the access keys and secret keys for this IAM user. So in order to generate the access keys and secret keys for this IAM user, just go to security credentials. In the security credentials, you can see access keys here. So click on create access key, and then select the use case as a CLI, because we are going to execute the commands in order to create the cluster. Okay, and then click on confirmation, click on next, and then click on access key and secret, create access keys. Now you have the access keys and secret keys. Make sure to download this CSV file, because once you reload this, you will no longer see these access keys and secret keys. So it is always good if you can download this CSV file, so that even if you reload the page, your access keys and secret keys are still available in the Excel file that you have downloaded. Right. So now what we'll do is we'll configure these access keys and secret keys in the EC2 instance. But before we configure the access keys and secret keys in the EC2 instance, we need to install AWS CLI here. Now, in order to install AWS CLI, I'm just going to create a file called aws.sh. And inside this file, I'm going to keep the commands that are related to installation of AWS CLI. So let me just paste the commands, press escape :WQ, sh space aws.sh, so that AWS CLI will get installed. Once the CLI installation is successful, then we can configure the access keys and secret keys which we have just generated. So let us configure the access keys and secret keys. So in order to configure the access keys and secret keys, we have the command which is aws space configure. Now the question comes here is, why are we configuring the access keys and secret keys in the EC2 instance? The reason why we are configuring is, by using this EC2 instance only, we are going to create the EKS cluster. So by default, directly, this EC2 instance doesn't have the permission to go and communicate with the AWS cloud, or specifically the AWS services. So if I want my EC2 instance to communicate with the AWS cloud and specifically to work with any services, first it should have the permissions. Now, how will you provide the permissions? In the form of access keys and secret keys. How will you configure the access keys and secret keys? You need to install AWS CLI. So that is why I have just installed AWS CLI. Now we are going to configure the access keys and secret keys. So copy that access key and paste it here, and then copy the secret access key also, and then paste it here. And default region, I'm working in North Virginia, so the region code will be US East 1. If you are working in any other region, you can give any other region code also. And output, you can give either JSON or you can give the table, or if you don't give anything also, that is not a problem. Right. Now AWS is configured successfully. Now this EC2 instance is having all the permissions to connect with AWS cloud. Now it can create the EKS cluster, and in the process of creating the EKS cluster, it will create a cloud formation stacks, and it will create a VPC, it will create IAM roles, and it will create multiple other things such as EC2 instance worker nodes for the cluster. Right. So but before doing all these things, first we need to install kubectl. Why kubectl? Because if you want to communicate with the cluster, that is EKS cluster, we need kubectl for that. So for that, I'm just going to create a file which is called as a kube.sh file. Now inside the kube.sh file, I'm going to create all the commands which are related to the kubectl installation. Why kubectl? Because if you want to interact with the EKS cluster, we need kubectl for that. So that's why I'm installing kubectl here. And once we have the kubectl ready, then we are also going to install EKSCTL as well. Why EKSCTL? Because we are working with EKS service, Elastic Kubernetes Service. So if you want to communicate or if you want to create the EKS cluster, we need EKSCTL for that. So for that reason, I'm going to install the EKSCTL as well. So just paste it and then press escape :WQ and execute the EKS.sh file, so that EKS related commands will also get executed. Now we have successfully created multiple things that are required to create the EKS cluster. So we have first configured the AWS, then we have installed kubectl, then we have installed EKSCTL. Now we are ready to create the cluster. Now, in order to create the cluster, we are going to use EKSCTL command. So EKSCTL create cluster and then cluster name. So this is my cluster name. In which region I want to create? I'm trying to create in the North Virginia region. For North Virginia region, the region code is US East 1. And then I'm going to use the worker node type as T2.medium. It's good if you can go with T2.medium. If you want, you can go with large instances also. But for this project, T2.medium is more than sufficient. And I'm going to launch these worker nodes in two availability zones, which is US East 1A and US East 1B. Now here, if you see, I am not mentioning how many worker nodes I need. So by default, when you execute this command, it will create 2 worker nodes. If you want more worker nodes, then you have to explicitly provide how many worker nodes that you want. Suppose, let's say I want 3 worker nodes. Then you have to give hyphen hyphen nodes equals to 3. If you want 10 worker nodes, then hyphen hyphen nodes equals to 10. Like that, you can customize the command. So, but for time being, this command will create by default 2 worker nodes only. So for this project, 2 worker nodes is more than sufficient because it's not completely a real-time project where we'll have the live users. So it is just a project which we are doing it internally. So 2 worker nodes are more than sufficient, and it will also save the cost aspect also because we are using T2.medium. Obviously, T2.medium is not a free instance. It's a instance where the charges are applicable. So that's why I'm just going with 2 instances as worker nodes and with the capacity instance type as T2.medium. Now the cluster will get created by using this name in this region. In the process of creating the cluster, we can see it is going to create the cloud formation. You can see that it is creating the cloud formation stacks, and it will create a VPC, and it will create the worker nodes in the backend. So this cluster creation will take some time. Meanwhile, what we'll do is we'll do some setups in the Jenkins dashboard. So I was telling we have to set up few things here. So first what we do is we are going to install the plugins. Now, if you want to install the plugins, what we are going to do is we are going to work with installation of plugins. So where that plugins option is available, that plugins option is available in the manage Jenkins. As I said, here you are not seeing the manage Jenkins option. Jenkins has just got updated. So let us go with the settings icon here on the top right side so that you'll be taken to the manage Jenkins page. So you can see I'm there in the manage Jenkins, and here you can see the plugins. So click on plugins under system configuration, go to available plugins, and here we are going to install some plugins. So firstly, I'm going to install a plugin called Pipeline Stage View. So this particular plugin will allow us to see the stage by stage execution once after we create the job. And then we are going to install all Docker related plugins as well, so that these plugins will help us to create the Docker images and to push the images to the Docker Hub. And then we are also going to install Kubernetes related things as well. So just select Kubernetes Client API, credentials, Kubernetes CLI, Kubernetes credentials provider. These are all sufficient. And then we are going to install the AWS credentials plugin also, because we need to configure the AWS credentials in the Jenkins. So what are the credentials? Access keys and secret keys. So select the AWS credentials plugin. And then we are also going to monitor the application using Prometheus and Grafana. So for that reason, we need to have Prometheus metrics as the plugin that we need. So I have just given all the plugins that we need in the documentation. Also, you can see that Docker related commands, and then AWS credentials, pipeline stage view, and then Kubernetes related commands. And then, yeah, this one, config file provider, which is for Kubernetes also. So let me just paste that command, paste that name, config file provider. So this particular plugin will help us to configure, to update the configurations in the Kubernetes, and then Prometheus metrics. So click on install so that all the plugins will get installed. Now remember, whenever you install the plugins, it is always recommended to restart the Jenkins. Okay, to restart the Jenkins. So how do you restart the Jenkins? Here you can see there is an option called restart Jenkins. And also there is one more thing that you need to understand, which is whenever you are installing the Prometheus metrics plugin, by default, it will not install the Prometheus plugin. So what you have to do is you have to restart the Jenkins. You can see that Prometheus plugin does not support dynamic loading. Jenkins need to be restarted for the update to take effect. So let us just restart Jenkins. Just click on this button so that Jenkins will get restarted. Once the Jenkins is restarted, then all the plugins will get installed successfully. So once Jenkins gets installed, you need to log into the Jenkins again by using the username and password which you have set up while setting up the Jenkins. So let it come, and then we can access, we can log in using username and password to the Jenkins. So now you can see it is asking me to sign into the Jenkins again. So let me just enter the username and password and then click on sign in. Once we go into the Jenkins, we'll be able to see the plugins got successfully installed. And then click on go back to the top page. So with this, whatever plugins that are required for this project, I have installed everything. Now we need to configure the Docker tool in the Jenkins, and we need to configure the Docker Hub credentials as well as the AWS credentials. So for that, we need to go to Manage Jenkins. So click on this settings icon, and then under settings, under system configuration, you can see there is an option called tools. So go to tools here and then configure the Docker tool. Okay, configure Docker tool. So go to add Docker installations, add Docker. So I'm just giving the tool name as a Docker, and then select install automatically, add installer, download from docker.com, and let it download the latest version. By using this Docker tool only, Jenkins will work by creating the Docker images and pushing the images to the Docker Hub. Now we have configured the Docker. Now, how do you configure the Docker Hub credentials? Now, if you want to configure the Docker Hub credentials, scroll down, go to security. Under security, you can see there is an option called credentials. Now, why do we need to configure the Docker Hub credentials? Because we are doing in an automated way, that is in a CI/CD process. So when you do the CI/CD process, Jenkins should automatically create the images and it should push the images to the Docker Hub. Now, Jenkins doesn't have the direct permissions to push the images to the Docker Hub. So for that reason, we are going to configure the Docker Hub credentials in the Jenkins. So go to System, under Domains, you can see Global. So click on Global, add credentials, and Docker Hub will have a username with password. So kind is username with password, scope is global, enter the Docker Hub username and Docker Hub password. So whatever is your Docker Hub password, enter the Docker Hub password, and ID, I'm giving it as a Docker Hub -credentials. You can give any ID, but I'm just going with this particular name. So, but remember, whatever name that you are giving it here, the same name you have to provide even when you are writing the Jenkins pipeline also. So I'll show you the Jenkins pipeline in some time. So click on create, so that Docker Hub credentials has got created successfully. And then we are going to work with adding the AWS credentials also. Why AWS credentials? Because the application should go and deploy into the EKS cluster. So Jenkins doesn't have a direct access to the EKS cluster. So for that, we need to give the permissions to Jenkins to go and access the EKS cluster. But how will you tell to Jenkins to access the EKS cluster? You need to provide the access keys and secret keys, because technically we cannot provide the AWS account, email ID and password, because that is not recommended. So we are working with an IAM user. Since we are working with an IAM user, we are going to configure the IAM user credentials, or we can also configure the access keys and secret keys, which we have configured to that particular user. So I am going to prefer the configuration of access keys and secret keys. So from the kind AWS credentials, ID, you can give any ID. Let's say I'll just give AWS-creds, and description also AWS-creds. Here we have to provide the access key and secret access key. If you remember, I have just downloaded that file, CSV file. So from this file, you can get it, or otherwise, you can also directly get it from here, because I have not reloaded this page. Okay, so let me paste the secret access key. Let me also paste the access key as well. So copy the access key and paste it. And with this, let us create the AWS credentials also. So with this, we have created the AWS credentials as well. Right. So now we are ready to create the job. But before creating the job, let me explain you what are all the things that are available in this repository. Okay, so I have already written the Jenkins file. I have already written the Kubernetes related YML files and all those things. Even Argo CD related deployment file also I have written. We'll come back to this one in some time. So let's go with the Kubernetes folder first. And here I have written two files. One is called as deployment YML file, and the other one is Ingress YML file. So in the deployment YML file, I have written the commands related to, I have written the instructions related to the deployment. So API version, kind is a deployment, metadata, this is the deployment name. You can give any name to the deployment, and a namespace. I want to have this deployment in a default namespace. If you want to have the deployment in a custom namespace, you can give whatever namespace you want here. But before you run the pipeline, what you have to do is you have to first create the namespace in your server. without creating the namespace, it won't work. So if you want to do the deployment in a custom namespace, you can do whatever namespace name that you want. But before running the pipeline, make sure to create the namespace in the server. Okay, that's most important. And labels I'm giving spec. Under spec, I'm giving the replicas. So I need 3 pods to be in the running state. Okay, that's what replica count represents. And I'm going to use a selector where match labels I'm using. So I'm going to match the labels using app : text solutions. So this is the label that I'm providing, and template metadata labels. This is also same thing. And then spec, I want to create a containers. So containers. So this is the name of the container, and how I want to create the container using the image. Where is the image? In the Docker Hub. This is my Docker Hub username. What is the image name? Text solutions -app : latest. How does this image name comes? Because I have configured that in the Jenkins file. I'll show you that name in some time in the Jenkins file. And ports, I want to run this application on port number 80. And I have also given the resource quota as well. Okay, that is maximum resources that I can use and minimum resources that are required for my application. I mean, that are required for my namespace, which is a default namespace. And I have also configured the liveness probe and readiness probe also. If you have an idea about liveness probe and readiness probe, you can just, you will be able to understand. But if you don't have an idea, I want you to go back to the Kubernetes lectures and you can refer the what is meant by liveness probe and readiness probe. However, if you don't have much idea or in-depth idea about the Kubernetes concept, I am very soon going to start a Kubernetes related batch where I'm going to talk about Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform. And the batch is going to start from August 7th. If you are interested to register for this batch, the link to the registration form is available in the description of this video. You can register to this batch whereby paying the fee details and all. And if you have any questions related to the batch or related to the timings and all that part, you can also contact me using the number which you are seeing on the screen and also the poster details as well. Anyway, so let's go back, and I'm using the kind as a service, and the service I'm using the cluster IP as the service. You may ask why you are not using load balancer as the service type. Because when you use load balancer as a service type, for each and every service, you are going to get the load balancer service type. Okay, load balancer. The multiple load balancers you are going to get. But that is what I told in the beginning of this video, where we are not going to have multiple load balancer. We'll have only one load balancer URL. From that load balancer only, we'll access multiple services that are available for my application. So I'm just using cluster service type as cluster IP to protect the services. And port, all the services will run on port number 80. Target port is 80. Protocol, it's a TCP protocol. And selector, how this service will identify the pods by using the selector. So where we have provided this selector, app text solutions. If you see under labels, I have provided app text solutions. Okay, that is how it is going to identify this one. Right. So this is about deployment YML file. And the next one is Ingress YML file, the most important file for this demonstration. So API version and kind, I want to create Ingress, and metadata. This is the Ingress name, default namespace, and all those things, annotations and all. And here, if you have a custom domain, you can go with your own domain. But I don't have any custom domain, so I'll directly access the application using the load balancer URL only. But here, if you want to have a custom domain, let's say you have created a Route 53 domain, using Route 53, you have created a domain, and that domain you want to configure, you can configure it here. So just for your reference, if anybody is having a custom domain, you can configure your domain here, okay, by using the TLS certificates, right? And then the default path, it will be taken to the home page. And here, as I said, when you just give the repository, when you just give the Ingress URL, it will by default take to the home page. And whenever you click on specific service, it will be taking you to that particular service. So this is about Ingress YML file, right? So we have Kubernetes deployment YML file and Ingress YML file. And the next thing is the Jenkins file. But before talking about Jenkins file, as I said, this particular application is having 4 services. First one is about HTML. So you can see the complete code of about HTML, contact HTML page, and index.html page, and services.html page. Anyway, we'll talk about these ones Again, don't bother about the code. It is not our duty. Developers will take care of that. And then I'm going to write the Docker file also. So I'm using Nginx as the base image, and I'm going to copy the index.html file to this particular path. Why this path? Because whenever you are using Nginx, we are going to deploy the HTML pages in this path. This is the default path where you can deploy the HTML pages. Right. So I'm just copying all the files to this particular path, which is a default path that is available in the Nginx. And then I'm going to configure the nginx.configuration file to this particular path. And I'm going to expose the application on port number 80. And this is the command to start the Nginx. Right. So here in the nginx.conf, I have kept all the configurations related to the nginx.conf. So you can see all the things, and you can also see the about.html, index.html, services.html, contact.html pages, and all those things. Okay, right. So again, these are all things will be taken care by the developers only. You don't have to bother about this one, but it is our duty to write the Docker file and the Jenkins file. Right. So let me show you the Jenkins file also. So I'm just creating the environment. So this is my Docker Hub username. So if it is not there, it will create the Docker Hub username. You can give any name that you want. And cluster name. So this is my cluster name. In your case, if you have used a different cluster name, make sure you are going to use a different cluster name. You can see I have created the cluster as Kastro-cluster in US East 1. So make sure whatever is your cluster name and whichever region your cluster is available, give that names properly. And then namespace, I'm going to deploy this entire application in the default namespace. Application name, I'm just giving some name as the application name. And the first stage is a checkout stage where Git checkout will happen, where it will take the complete code. And then we are going to build the Docker images. Now, in order to build the Docker images, we will use Docker build-t. Okay, Docker build-t. That is what I have given. So build number will be basically coming from the thing that you are giving in the environment. So that's something which is applying here. And then tag will be coming based on the build number, because when you deploy the application using Jenkins, for every build, you will get a build number. So based on build number, automatically, whatever is the build number, the tag will be given for that build number. And it will always take the latest image on. So the command to build the image is docker build-t and then image name. So how the image name will come from the image tag, So I'm just defining in a custom, in a dynamic way, right? And then I'm going to tag it. How I'm tagging? By using the latest tag. Okay, by using the latest tag. So how the tag will come? Based on the build number, right? So that whenever you have the latest builds, automatically that particular latest application will be deployed. And then I'm going to push the images to the Docker Hub. So how do you push the images to the Docker Hub? By using Docker push command. But how Docker push will work? Because I have generated the credentials here. You can see Docker Hub -creds and all those things. But if you go with the pipeline syntax, let's say I'll just create a new item and then I'll just call it as Ingress -app pipeline. Okay. And here you will have an option which is called as a pipeline syntax here. So open pipeline syntax, and in the pipeline syntax under sample step, you have with the Docker. So let me just show you that one. Just a second. Yeah. So with the Docker container. Okay, with Docker container. So you can just select this Docker container and then give the image name and tags and all those things, and then you can generate the pipeline script. So this concept I have already explained in my previous videos. If you don't have an idea, so please refer to my Book My Show application or Swiggy or Zomato applications as well. Since I have already talked about those things, here I'm not focusing on those elements as of now. Right. So if you remember, I have configured the Docker Hub credentials, Docker Hub -creds. Let me just show you that also. And let's verify whether we have configured it as Docker Hub -creds or with a different name. Let's go to settings, and in the settings, credentials. And in the credentials, I have configured it as Docker Hub -credentials. So let me go to this one. I'll just copy this entire pipeline script and I'll just paste it in the notepad so that I can edit it. Right. So here what we need to do is we need to change the repository URL here. So let me get the repository URL. So just go to code and then code, copy the repository URL, and I'll just paste this repository URL here. Okay, I'm just updating this one. Cluster name, region, namespace, these are all fine. And Kastro V, that's my Docker Hub username. In your case, you'll have a different Docker Hub username. So make sure of having that particular username. And then creating the image, and then pushing the image to the Docker Hub, and then configuring AWS and kubectl. Okay, so by using with credentials. Again, this is also something which is generated by using pipeline syntax concept. And then finally, the deployment should happen to the Kubernetes. So how the deployment will happen? By using AWS credentials. So if you remember, I have configured AWS-creds. So with the same name, the credentials will get configured, and then it is going to build the thing. So let me just change it here also. So here it should be Docker Hub-credentials. Let me just take this name once again, and let me update it, because these updates are very, very important to do. Okay, so because I have configured with a different name. So Docker Hub-credentials. So let me just check where else it can be there. AWS creds, that is fine, because AWS-creds, that's the same name. So whatever the names that you are giving here, same IDs you have to provide here as well. And then AWS creds, just give me a second. I'm just checking where else I can do. AWS-creds. Right, I think that's the thing. Let me just verify Docker Hub. Yeah, that's fine. Right. So, and then it is going to configure the AWS and kubectl. Okay, so we have just configured the AWS in the in the instance, right? In the same way, you can also configure using Jenkins also in a direct way. And then it is going to display the nodes, how many nodes are there, and then it is going to set the config also, which is to current context. And then finally, it is going to deploy the application into the Kubernetes cluster. How it is going to deploy? It will go to the folder called K8s folder, which is there in my GitHub repository. If you see, there is a repository called K8s folder, and inside the folder, I have deployment YML file. So I'm going to apply that deployment YML file. So kubectl apply deployment.yml file. And then let's say if you have updated anything, so automatically rollout should happen. So that rollout also I have kept, and then it is going to give the number of pods and display the service as well. And finally, the application will be deployed using Ingress controller. So how the Ingress controller deployment will happen? Because of the ingress.yml file. So that's what I have given. So kubectl apply -f in K8s folder, I have a file called ingress.yml file. So that YML file, I am just applying it. So once this is done, then you are going to get the Ingress URL. So by using that Ingress URL, you are going to access the application. And once the deployment is successful, it is going to display the URL, homepage, and about services, contact with microservices, I told no, those things it is going to display. And finally, it will clean up the things. So post build actions, it is going to clean up the Docker images and all those things which are not required. Okay, so this is the complete pipeline. Now here, we are doing the deployment in the Kubernetes cluster, especially by using Ingress controller. So as I said in the beginning of the video, we have to explicitly install the Ingress controller. So if you want to install the Ingress controller, we have a command to execute where we are going to execute that command in order to create, in order to install the Ingress controller. Right. You can see up to here, we are done. Now we need to modify some permissions. Why? Because Jenkins by default will run as a Jenkins user. So Jenkins doesn't have the permissions to work with Docker. So for that, we need to modify the permissions, or we need to add the group to the Jenkins. So that's why I have just added. And since we have modified the permissions, we need to restart Docker, and we also need to restart Jenkins. These are essential because by default, Jenkins will run as a Jenkins user. So it is not having direct permissions to work with Docker. So that's why I have added the group permissions of Docker to the Jenkins. And then I have restarted Docker, I have restarted Jenkins. Once these two things are done, just go to the Jenkins dashboard and reload the page. Since Jenkins we have restarted, here also it will get restarted automatically. If it doesn't, just reload the page so that Jenkins will get restarted. Once Jenkins is restarted, then you have to log into the Jenkins by using a username and the password that you have set up while creating the Jenkins or while setting up the Jenkins dashboard. Right. So now we are ready to build the application. Okay, build and deploy the application. Right. So let's go to pipeline. In the pipeline, I'll just paste this entire script. But before that, let me install the Ingress controller. So this is the command to install the Ingress controller. So I'll just directly install by using the command so that Ingress controller will get installed. Now you can see it got installed successfully. Now let's first verify whether we have the worker nodes or not. kubectl get nodes is the command. You can see 2 worker nodes are available. So how these 2 worker nodes are coming? Because we have used the EKS create cluster command. So this command will create by default 2 worker nodes. If you want to verify, go to EC2 service and just reload it, and you will be able to see 2 worker nodes as well. So let it come. We can see 2 worker nodes. You can see Kastro-cluster and Kastro-cluster. So these are 2 worker nodes, and you can see t2.medium are the types of worker nodes. I mean instance types. You can see this one. So same thing, it got created. And if you go to EKS service also, it must have created the cluster, Kastro-cluster. So go to Kastro-cluster and you can see the details of all these things. Okay, right. So now we have installed the Ingress controller as well. So once this is done, then you can verify whether Ingress controller is successfully installed or not. Because Ingress controller should run one of the pods. Okay, one pod, it should be in the running state, this pod. Okay, these 2 pods, it's fine. But this pod must be in the running state. Only then you can say Ingress controller is successfully installed. Now we are ready to create the pipeline job. So let's go to the Jenkins. And here I'll just copy this entire pipeline script. Just give me a second. I'll go to a new tab. Yeah. So I'll copy this entire pipeline script and I'll paste it here. Right. So you can see this is the image and let's just verify. Yeah. So click on apply and save it. So now we have configured the pipeline also. Now we are ready to build the pipeline. So just click on build now so that build will happen. So you can also see the stage by stage execution of the pipeline as well. You can see the first stage is checkout stage. So here you can see the pipeline is successfully built and all the stages are successful, right? You can also see the pipeline status, which is success. Now we are ready to access the application. But before we access the application, let us verify whether pods are available or not. kubectl get pods, and you can see 3 pods are available. Why 3 pods? Because if you remember in the YML file, that is deployment.yml file, I have kept the replica count as 3. So that is the reason why 3 pods are in the running state. And if you want to get the deployment name, so kubectl get deploy, and you can see deployment name, and this deployment is having 3 pods, and all the 3 pods are in the running state. And similarly, if you want to verify the service also, kubectl get svc. You can see the service which we have created as well. Now we are ready to access the application. So how will you access the application? By using Ingress URL. So how will you get the Ingress URL? We have the command kubectl get svc, that is a service, and we have created a service called ingress-nginx-controller service, and it is there in a custom namespace called ingress-nginx namespace. Okay, so this is the custom URL. So copy this entire URL and then go to the browser and paste the URL. This is one way. Otherwise, we can go to the EC2 service. In the EC2, we have load balancer, and in the load balancer, it must have created a load balancer. So that load balancer DNS you can take and you can access the application. So how this load balancer got created? I told you there are different ways of creating the Ingress controller. So one of the options is by using AWS ELB option. Okay, AWS ELB, Elastic Load Balancer option. Otherwise, you can also go with Nginx Ingress controller also. Okay, so let me just click on this one and you can see the DNS name of the load balancer. This DNS name and also this one, both are same. You can see A143. That's the thing. And you can see the same thing, A143. So copy this one and then go to your new tab, paste it and hit enter, and you will be able to access the application. So this is the application. So as I said, I'm going to start one new batch on Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform training. This is the 6th batch, which I am going to start from August 7th onwards. So if you want to see more details about this one, you can see the why you need to choose this training, because live sessions will be happening, scenario-based learning, and almost 10 plus real-time projects we are going to discuss. Apart from the projects that are there on the YouTube, I'm also going to discuss a couple of additional projects as well as part of the training. So this is about the home page of the application. You see, I'm giving the Ingress URL and directly it has taken me to the home page of the application. Let's say I want to go to the About page. So click on About page and you see how the URL has got changed. It got changed to About. If you remember in the beginning of the session, I was telling that path-based routing. So is it routing based on the path? Yes, it is routing. So if you want to know more details about the training, you can see I'm going to talk about Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform, where I'm going to cover from basics to the advanced level. And you can see the details of the training. So the batch is going to start on August 7th, which is 2025. And every day the classes will be there from 5 o'clock to 6:30 in the evening. And Monday to Friday, the sessions will be there. And a total duration will be 40 to 45 days, covering in-depth concepts about Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform. And you can it's a completely an online live sessions only. And recorded videos access will also be given. Once the session gets completed, you will be getting the recorded sessions access also, so that you can practice it. And the sessions will have an access as a lifelong access. And there will be one-to-one mock interview sessions also for everyone who is there in the batch. At the end of the batch, the mock interviews will be conducted. And I am the trainer who is going to teach everything. And the training fee is 6,000 rupees, which is at a minimal price, where I think you can pay. If you are interested, you can register to this training program and you can start joining the classes. And the link to this one will also be provided in the description of this video, so that you can register for this training and you can listen to demo classes as well. I'll talk about that in some time. And training approach, you can see the details of training approach. And so far I have trained 700 plus students and worked with 5 plus institutes. And I have 5 plus years of training experience, both in DevOps as well as AWS Cloud. And you can see the details about myself. Okay. And then you can go to modules contact. Let's say I'll go to the contact page. So here what I have done is I have designed the home page and about page in one way and modules and contact page in a different way. Let me show you that. Just for a change, I have designed it in that way. You can see. So go to modules. Okay, go to modules. And here, let me just go to modules. So contact page and modules page. Here it is coming it as services, but I think I have not updated in the code, but that's fine. It is doing the path-based routing anyway. So training modules, as I said, Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes. As part of Kubernetes, we'll also be talking about Argo CD as well. And then Terraform will also be discussed. And for each and every tool that I'm going to talk, there will be a separate projects based on each and every tool. Along with that, we are going to club all these tools and we are going to make a projects as well. Okay, so real-time projects, a total of 10 plus real-time projects we are going to discuss during this complete training. And it will be a DevSecOps approach, not just the DevOps projects. We are going to cover SonarQube, Nexus, Trivy, Docker related tools such as Docker Scout image analysis, OWASP, all those things also will be covered as part of this training. So these are the different modules for this one. So if you want to register for this training, you can just click on contact page. So let me just go to the contact page. Just a second. Contact page. Yeah. So you can connect with me. You can write an email to this particular email ID, or you can also call to this particular number if you have any questions related to the training as well. And you can also enroll for this batch by clicking on register now, where it will be taking to the page, okay, where you can register by providing your name, email, and then mobile number and your willingness to join the session. So once you register for the training, one day before, that is August 7th, the sessions will start. August 6th evening at around 6 o'clock, you will be getting the meeting link to join for the demo sessions. So 2 days of demo sessions will be there. That is on 7th and 8th August, you will have 2 demo sessions. Okay, 2 demo sessions. And then you can enroll here and you can also reserve your spot. Just again, the same link will be taken care. So this is batch 6, as I said earlier. Okay. And if you want to join the WhatsApp group, you can just click on join WhatsApp group. where you can join the WhatsApp group and you will be getting the notifications about that particular batch and also the details. And the current batch, which completed on June 29th. Okay, current batch was completed on June 29th. And you can also see the responses which I have got from different people who has registered for this batch. Here, just for time convenience and space constraints, I have kept only 6 of the feedbacks that I have received. And these are genuine feedbacks. These are not something which are cooked up or which are made out. So these are genuine feedbacks which were received from the students themselves. Okay, and you can see the students and the continuous mock interviews, everything has been done. So however, this is the complete project that is related to the deployment of a microservices application using Ingress controller. So home page is one microservice, about page is another microservice, modules is another page, contact is another page. So here, home page and about page, you can directly click on it, but modules page, if you are unable to see that, just go to the contact page. From contact page, you come to the modules page so that you can see what are all the modules that are available in this project. Okay, right. So I hope you have understood how this project has to be done and what is the things that are discussed in this project. Now we look into the monitoring aspect of this project by using Prometheus and Grafana. So now let us work with the monitoring part of this project. In order to do the monitoring of this project, we are going to use Prometheus and Grafana as the monitoring tools. And then we are going to see how we can monitor this one. Now, before doing that one, what I'll do is instead of installing Prometheus and Grafana and configuring Prometheus and Grafana in the same existing EC2 instance, what I'll do is I'll launch a new EC2 instance. And in that instance, we are going to do all the configurations related to Prometheus and Grafana. So I'll just call this new server as a monitoring server. You can just give any name to the server. And I'm going to go with the Ubuntu server. And here what I'll do is instead of going with the 24.04, I'll be going with 22.04, which is the next latest version. So that's actually the better one that we can go with Prometheus and Grafana. Again, we can also use Prometheus, 24.04 AMI also. There is no problem with that, but I'm just going with 22.04. And instance type, as I said earlier, we are going to go with the t2.medium because t2.micro is not sufficient for this configuration. So that's the reason why I'm going with the t2.medium. And key pair, I'm going to select the existing key pair only. Otherwise, if you want, you can go with a new key pair as well. And security group also, I'm going to go with the existing security group, which I have used it for the Ingress server. So for the Ingress server, I have used the Launch Wizard 4. So I'm going with the same security group, that is Launch Wizard 4. And then storage wise, I'll be going with 30 GB storage, which is the maximum one. Once this is ready, then we can connect to that EC2 instance and we will do all the configurations related to the Prometheus and Grafana. And finally, we'll work with the monitoring part. So you can see the monitoring server is in the pending state. So let it come and then we can verify, we can connect to that server using a MobaXter. So meanwhile, let me just launch few things in the session. SSH, username is Ubuntu, and advanced SSH settings, use private key, and then select the PEM file, which was used to launch the monitoring server, and then get the public IP address of the monitoring server. So paste it. Okay. Now, once this is done, the basic things that we have to do is first we need to switch to the root user, and then we are going to update the existing packages. Sudo su to switch to the root user, sudo apt update -y is to update the existing packages. Once this is done, then we are going to switch to the root user path. So you can just do cd so that you'll be going to the root user path, cd. Okay, so let it come and then we can see that. So let me switch to the root path, cd. If you do pwd, I'm there in the /root path. Now what we'll do is we need to create one user called Prometheus user. So in order to create the user called Prometheus user, this is the command to create a Prometheus user. So the user got created, and then a detailed explanation is also provided here. So those who have an idea about Linux part, maybe you might be getting what is this. But if you don't have an idea about Linux part, you can just go with the explanation as well. Now what we will do is let us download the Prometheus in the form of tar file. So the tar.z file will get downloaded. You can see that. So this tar file, we are going to extract it. So in order to extract, the command is a tar space -xvf and then this tar file name. Right. Once it is extracted, you can see the extracted directory also. This is the one. Now what we will do is let us create a parent directory in /etc path, which is called Prometheus directory. And now let us move inside the directory, that is this one. How this directory came when we extracted this tar file, this directory has come. Right. So now the next thing is we are going to move some files from the existing location to some default location. One such thing that we are going to do is where we are going to move Prometheus binary and prompt tool to a path which is called as a /user/local/bin. And then we are also going to move the console libraries to the Prometheus related configuration directory, which is in the /etc path. And then we are going to edit one file, which is called as prometheus.aml file. So that file also, I'm moving it from current location to /etc/Prometheus path. Once that is done, then you can verify whether the permissions are, you can give the permissions to that one, which is done. And then we can move to the root path, that is a CD if you just, right. So now I'm there in the root path. So if you do pwd, you can see that. Now we can verify whether Prometheus is installed successfully or not. So for that, Prometheus space --version, that's the command, so that you can see Prometheus is installed successfully. Now what we need to do is we are going to use systemd, which is basically a system and service manager for Linux operating system. Now for that, what we have to do is we need to create a systemd unit configuration file. So that configuration file we are going to create in the default path, which is in /etc/systemd/system. And this is the file name, prometheus.service. It's the file name. So inside that file, we are going to add some configurations part. Again, don't bother about these configurations because this configuration has been got from the official documentation only. So no need to remember. But only thing that you have to focus is Prometheus will run on port number 9090. That's the only thing that you have to focus, where we are going to access Prometheus in some time. Now let us enable Prometheus and let us start Prometheus and let's check whether Prometheus is properly working or not. So I'm just enabling Prometheus and then we can start the Prometheus also, and then we can check the status of Prometheus. You can see Prometheus is active and running. Now we are good to access the Prometheus. So how will you access? Select the IP address of the monitoring server, go to a new tab, in the new tab, paste it, and then :9090. Hit enter so that you'll be able to see the Prometheus dashboard. Okay, this is the Prometheus dashboard. Now here, we are going to do few things here. Okay, we are going to do few things. So here you can see there is an option called status. So click on status dropdown, and here we have to register our targets. So what are our targets? Our target is our Ingress server, because in that only we are running Jenkins and all that part. So click on targets. By default, you will see one target, which is Prometheus. So currently we have Prometheus server. Okay. So what it will do is it scraps itself every 15 seconds by default. Okay. Every 15 seconds, it scraps the metrics. Now what we are going to do is we are going to install node exporter. Okay. We are going to install the node exporter. This node exporter will help us to get the details, and then we can visualize that in a better way using Grafana. Okay, so let us do that part also. So let us go with the node exporter part. Okay, node exporter part. So let me switch to let me clear the screen. And here what we'll do is let us install node exporter. Okay, that is this one. Right. So for that, what I'll do is I'll create one more user, which is called as a node exporter user. And then I'm going to get the node exporter tar file also. And then once that node exporter tar file is there, then we are going to extract the node exporter tar file. So the file got extracted. And then we are going to move that file to /user/local/bin path, because that's basically where we'll keep everything related to the default installations. And then we don't need this node exporter tar file. So let me remove this tar file, which are related to node exporter. So rm space -rf node_exporter star. So anything that comes with node_exporter as the initial name of the file or a directory, they all has got deleted. Now you can check the version of node exporter as well. So you can see the node exporter version, which is 1.6.1. And then we are going to here also, we are going to create a systemd configuration file, just like how we have done for Prometheus. Here also, we are going to do the same thing. And here we are going to add the default content, which is a configuration related part. So let me just copy this entire thing. And here we need to do if you want, you can do few things, few changes. What is that change? So we can see collector dot login d. Okay, this one you can add with any additional tags also if it is required, but it's not technically required, but that's fine. Right. So let's press escape WQ. Now let us enable the node exporter and let us start the node exporter, and then we'll finally verify whether node exporter is properly working or not by using a status command. So systemctl status node exporter, and you can see node exporter is also active and running. Right. So with this, node exporter is also active and running. Now the next thing that we have to do is we need to configure Prometheus plugin integration. Okay, so if you remember, when I'm installing plugins in the Jenkins dashboard, I have installed the Prometheus plugin. So if you haven't installed that plugin, you have to install now. But because without that plugin, monitoring is not possible. Okay, without that plugin, monitoring is not possible. Right. So now we need to do some changes in a file, okay, which is called as prometheus.aml file. Prometheus.aml file. But where is that file? Inside /etc/Prometheus path. Let me show you that one in the documentation. So configure Prometheus plugin integration. So I have just installed Prometheus plugin as well. So if you haven't installed, so make sure to install that one. Right. Once that is done, we need to do the configuration of Prometheus. So to configure Prometheus, in order to scrap metrics from node exporter and Jenkins, you need to modify a file which is called as prometheus.aml file. But where is this file? Inside /etc/Prometheus path. So let me go to that path, and inside that you can see prometheus.aml file. So this file we are going to edit it. So as a root user, so sudo vi prometheus.aml file. Now here what we are going to do is you can delete this entire thing, and then you can go with the new thing. So this is the thing. Either you can change this one alone, otherwise delete everything whatever is there. %d to delete everything. And then you just keep this thing here. Okay, because here we are going to tell to monitoring server that where my Jenkins is running, where my monitoring server is running. So here you need to change these things. So monitoring server IP address and Jenkins server IP address with Jenkins server port number. So let us get those details. So monitoring server public IP address is this one. So let me go to MobaXterm, and here in the place of monitoring IP, monitoring VM IP, let us paste the monitoring server IP address. Okay, that is done. And then here we are going to paste the Jenkins server IP address. Jenkins server is basically the Ingress server, because inside this only we have installed Jenkins, Docker, and all those things. Okay, all the Kubernetes cluster related things, configurations, everything we have done inside that one. So just paste that public IP address of the server :8080. That's where Jenkins is running. So press escape :WQ. So once that is done, the next thing that we have to do is we are going to work with the validation, whether we have done the validation properly or not. So to check the validation of the configuration file, you can just execute this one. If you see success, that means validation is properly done. Right. So since the validation is good, then we are going to reload Prometheus configuration without actually starting it. So let me just reload Prometheus by using curl command, because Prometheus by default will run on port number 9090. So now let us go to Prometheus dashboard, and let me just reload it. Currently we have only one endpoint, that is Prometheus. So let me just reload it. So we should see the other things also. You can see Jenkins 0/1 up and Prometheus 0/1 up. So if you are seeing these things in the red color, that means they're not up and running. So for that, what we need to do is we need to open the port numbers. Okay, we need to open the port numbers. So if you have already opened the port numbers, that is fine. You just have to wait for some time and reload it. If you are still seeing, even after reloading also, if you are still seeing the red colors for Prometheus and Jenkins, make sure to open port number 8080 for Jenkins to up, and for Prometheus 9090, and for node exporter 9100. Okay, 9100. So make sure to do all these things. Right. Once that is done, that's what I have just given. Make sure to open 9100 and even 8080 also. Now we are good to go and install Grafana as well. Okay, which is to visualize that in a better way. Right. So first let us update the existing packages. Okay, I'm there in /etc path. If you want, you can change it the path also. And then we are going to install a few things that is related to HTTPS configurations. And then let me switch to the root path. That is a CD command you can just execute. I'm there in the /root path. Once that is done, the next thing that we need to do is we need to add the GPG key. So for that, I'll just execute this command where we can add the GPG key, and you should see OK. You can see that. The warning you can ignore, that's not a big deal. And then we are going to add the Grafana repository by executing echo command. And then we are going to update the existing packages. And finally, we'll install Grafana by using install Grafana. So sudo apt-get install Grafana. So once Grafana is installed, we can enable the Grafana and we can start the Grafana. And then finally, we can check the status of Grafana as well. So let it done, and then we can verify it. Okay. And also remember that Grafana will run on port number 3000. That's the default port number of Grafana. Right. It is done. Then the next thing that we need to do is let us enable Grafana server. So let me just paste it. And then we can start Grafana server. And then we can check the status of Grafana as well. So once you see the status as active and running, that means Grafana is good. So now we are going to access Grafana, so which is running on port number 3000. So let's go and get the IP address of the monitoring server, and then public IP, go to a new tab, paste it, :3000. That's where your Grafana will be coming out. Now here, Grafana will have to set up the credentials. So by default, the username and password for Grafana is admin. Okay, so let us give the default username, which is admin, and the password is also admin, and then click on OK. Okay, so if you want, you can set up a new password. Okay, that's up to you. Otherwise, you can skip it also. No problem with that. So I'm just setting up some new password here, and then click on submit. Right. So now we are able to access the Grafana dashboard. Okay, so here what we need to do is we need to add the dashboards. So by default, we don't get any kind of dashboards here. So we need to explicitly add the dashboards in the form of data sources. So here you can see there is an option called data sources. So click on add your first data source. Add your first data source. So this is where you can go with that. So let's click on add your first data source. And here what we need to do is we need to select Prometheus, because Prometheus is going to give the metrics to whom? To the Grafana. Grafana is a visualization tool. So from where Grafana will get the data? From the Prometheus. So select Prometheus. So the data source has been added. Once the data source is added, make sure the connection. Okay, so here if you see Prometheus, let it be the Prometheus and connection here. So here you have to give the Prometheus URL. So where my Prometheus is running in this port. So copy this entire port. Inside public IP along with port, and then paste it here. Make sure to remove this one. So let me just give this one, HTTP : yeah, this is fine. So make sure to remove the / in the end. That's done. And then authentication. So let it be as it is, no problem with that. Scroll down and then click on save and test. Once you save and test, you should see success. That means everything is good. Okay, now Grafana will get the data from the Prometheus. Prometheus will scrap the metrics every 10 seconds. Okay, every 10 seconds or every 15 seconds. So now we need to get the information. Now, in order to visualize in a better way, we need to get the dashboards. So if you want, you can create a new dashboards. Otherwise, you can go and get the existing dashboards. Okay, we can go and get the existing dashboards. Now, in order to get the dashboards, we need one ID. Okay, we need one ID. I'll show you that one. So you can see there is an option called dashboards. Click on dashboards here, and there will be multiple dashboards that are available. Okay, so let's click on new. Okay, let's click on new. And here, what we need to do is we need to add the dashboard. So you can see there is an option called import. If you want to create your own dashboard, you can create it. Otherwise, you can import also. So click on import, importing dashboard. And here you need to give the ID. Okay, we need to give the ID. So the ID which is required here is 1860. That's the ID number, 1860, 1860. And then scroll down, click on load, let it get loaded, and then scroll down Prometheus data source. So it is getting from the Prometheus only, and then click on import. Now with this, the first data source is added. That means the visualization. Now you see, immediately you start getting the information. Immediately you start getting the information of which server, the server which is required to do the monitoring part. So basically Prometheus server we are monitoring. Okay, so how much CPU utilization, how much memory utilization, all those informations you are going to get. So if you want to change this one, you can change also here. Let's say every 5 minutes, I want to get the information. You can get all the details. Like this, you can add multiple dashboards. Suppose, let's say, I want to add another dashboard to monitor Jenkins server. Now I'm monitoring Prometheus server. Similarly, if you want to monitor Jenkins server, we also have one more thing for that. So go to new and then click on import. And here we need to give the ID. Okay, we need to give the ID. That is a 9964. So if you want to monitor Jenkins server, 9964 is the ID. Just click on load and then Prometheus, select Prometheus, and then click on import. Now Jenkins dashboard will also be ready. You can see this is just actually the Jenkins server related things. Okay, you can see Jenkins nodes offline. There are no nodes that are in the offline. How much memory is used? JVM means Java Virtual Machine. Executors free, that is build executor status, all those things. So successful jobs. How many jobs I have built in my Jenkins? Only one job. So can you see that the one job? So how many jobs that were built? Only one job. Is it successful? Yes, it is successful. Like that, you can get the details of the Jenkins server also. Even you can get the details of worker nodes. You can get the details of the pods, number of pods available, all those things. But that and all is not required. But if you want to get that all those details, we have a command kubectl. Let's say kubectl get nodes. Okay, so sorry, not here. So if let me connect to the, this is basically the monitoring server. So I just closed that one. So monitoring server. Let me connect to the Ingress server, because in the Ingress server by default metric server will be installed. Okay, because we are using the EKS cluster now. So since we are using EKS cluster, by default, we'll get the Ingress, we'll get the metric server installed. So what is the use of that metric server? The use of that metric server is we can see which node is utilizing how much storage and how much details and all. So let us see that one. Sudo su, I'll just switch to the root path. So kubectl get nodes. You will see the node information here. But let's say I want to know my nodes are using how much information, like let's say CPU, memory, all those things. So for that, kubectl top nodes, you just execute top nodes so that you'll be getting to know your worker nodes which are there are using what kind of information. So by default, that metric server will be installed whenever you work with cloud managed clusters. So you can see CPU percentage, how much they are utilized, how much memory percentage is utilized, how many cores of CPUs have been used. Okay, all these details you'll get that. Okay, otherwise you can also monitor that using Prometheus and Grafana as well. You just have to add the IDs. Okay, like just go to dashboards and in the dashboards click on new import. And here I was getting an ID, right? So you can just get the IDs. If you want to get the IDs, you can just go to grafana.com/dashboards and you'll be getting multiple dashboards. You can see. So whatever dashboards that you want, you can just get that dashboards and you can get that. You can see Argo CD also you can monitor. So here you can see copy ID to clipboard and here you can see the ID. Okay. So like that, you can add whatever monitoring that, whatever things that you want to monitor, you can do that, all those things here. Okay. So I hope you can do this one as per your convenience or requirement. Right. So now we can see the Jenkins dashboard and the node exporter dashboard. If you just click on any dashboard, you'll get the information about that. Right. So this is about how to do the monitoring of the servers, that is Jenkins server as well as the Prometheus server. Technically monitoring server and the Jenkins server, which is basically an Ingress server. Now what we will do as a last part of this project is we are going to use Argo CD for the deployment, because for whenever you do the deployments related to the Kubernetes, we should not do the deployments using the Jenkins CI/CD, because the better approach for doing the deployment is following the GitOps approach, for especially for the Kubernetes deployments. Now, in order to follow the GitOps approach of deployment, we are going to use a tool which is called as Argo. So Argo CD is a continuous deployment tool. Now here what I'll do is I'll just go with the Ingress server, because I'm not going to do it in the monitoring server. This is Ingress server. So I'll just rename this also just for your clarity. Ingress server. Now inside the Ingress server, what we will do is we have to set up the Argo CD. Now in order to set up the Argo CD, directly we can execute the commands. So let me just set up the Argo CD using Helm. We have Helm charts. Okay, we have Helm charts. So using Helm charts, we are going to set up the Argo CD, so that you'll also get to know what is meant by Helm and all those things. So let us install Helm. And once we install Helm, then we are going to install Argo CD using Helm. Argo CD directly also we can install. But if you want to get an idea about how Helm is used or how Argo CD can be used, we can also go it in this way as well. Okay, let us set up Argo CD using Helm. So since we are going to set up Argo CD using Helm, so firstly we need to install Helm. So we need to install Helm. So let me copy this command so that we can install Helm. Okay, let's paste it, and then chmod. I'm just giving the permissions, and then we'll have helm.sh file. You can see this one. I'll just going to execute that file by using // command, and then you can verify the Helm version. Okay, so you can see Helm is successfully installed. Right. Now we are going to install Argo CD. How? Using Helm. So let me just add the Argo CD repository, and then let me update it. Once you update, you should see success. So now we can start working with Helm and Argo CD. Now here, what we need to do is, I have written that on. So in production, it is always suggested to create a custom namespace, especially when you are working with Argo CD. Usually, even when you are doing the deployments also, it is better to do the deployments in a custom namespace. If you see here, kubectl get pods. So I have deployed the pods in the default namespace. But if you want, you can change the deployment.aml file, and you can do the deployments in the custom namespace also. No problem here. Here you can see the namespace I have mentioned somewhere, right, in the deployment.yml file. Default namespace. If you want, you can go with custom namespace also. Right. So now what we are going to do is we are going to create a custom namespace for Argo CD alone. So for that, I'm going to create a namespace called Argo CD. That's the namespace name. So the namespace got created. Now we are going to install Argo CD in the custom namespace. Okay, we are going to install Argo CD in the custom namespace. So by using Helm, I'm installing. And once that is done, we can just check what are all the resources that are available in the namespace called Argo CD. So let it get installed, and then we can verify the resources by using kubectl get all command. So you can see it got successfully installed. Now, if you want to verify what are all the resources that are there in the Argo CD namespace, kubectl get all -n Argo CD, because -n represents the namespace name. So here you can see the resources that are there in the Argo CD namespace. You can see all the things that are in the running state. So that is most important. And here, one important thing that we need to look after is the Argo CD part, which is basically having the cluster IP. You see, Argo CD server, it is having cluster IP. But when you have the service type as a cluster IP, we cannot access the application. That is Argo CD page. Okay, Argo CD page we cannot access. So what we need to do, we need to change this cluster IP to the load balancer. We need to change this cluster IP to the load balancer. Now, in order to change the cluster IP to load balancer, we have to do the patching. Okay, we have to do the patching. So let me copy this entire command where it is used to patch the cluster IP service to the load balancer service. You can see it got patched. Now, if you want to verify whether it got patched or not, so earlier we have cluster IP. For Argo CD server, the service type is cluster IP. Now, if you do the same thing, you should see the cluster, instead of cluster IP, you see the load balancer URL, and you see the load balancer URL also. Now, copy this load balancer URL, go to the browser, and then paste it, and you should be able to see the Argo CD page. It will take some time because in the backend, load balancer must be in the creating state, provisioning state. So let us just verify. So let me just reload it. So this is one way of getting the load balancer URL. There is another way to do the same thing. So this approach also you can follow. So where we are going to install jQuery. Okay, so let us install jQuery also. I'm showing both approaches. So whichever you want, you can follow, and both can be, sorry, it is apt, so not M. So let us go with the apt package manager. So apt install jQuery. So once that is done, then we are going to go with the load balancer, which is going to give the load balancer URL. So this is my load balancer URL. So the same URL. So whatever you see, A932B. And here also you must be seeing the same thing, A932B. Okay. So just copy this load balancer URL and then go to your new tab in the browser, paste it, and then just reload the page. You will be able to see the Argo CD homepage. So let it come. It may take some time usually. So we need to wait for some time and to have the Argo CD homepage. So you may see something like this. So just click on advanced and then click on proceed. So once you click on proceed, you will be taken to the Argo CD page. Now here we are going to work with the username and password. So by default, Argo CD username is admin, but to get the password, okay, to get the password, it will be there in the form of secret. So to get that password, what we need to do is we need to go to the namespace called Argo CD namespace. So that's what I have given. So just go copy this command and then paste it so that you'll be able to get the password. So this is your password. So don't copy root. Just before root, whatever is there, copy that entire thing and then go here, paste it, and then click on sign. Right. So now your Argo CD is also ready. Okay, your Argo CD is also ready. Now we are going to do the deployments using Argo CD. So firstly, what we need to do is we need to add the repository URL. So just click on new app and then click on create. Okay. And then app name. Let's say I'll just give it as Ingress-app. Ingress-app. Project name. You can give any name or let's go with the default one. Sync policy. I want it to automatically sync. And then repository URL. Now, if you want to do the deployments using Argo CD, we need a separate YML file, which is called as Argo CD YML file. So that file is also ready. So you can see in the Argo CD folder and Argo CD.yml file is there. So I have just written the things. That's it. Okay, nothing much I have done. So if you want to be specific, I just have to change the repository URL here. Okay, it is microservices-ingress. I just have to change it to -Kastro. Let me just change because the repository name is changed. And once that is done, everything is good. So this is just an Argo CD related YML file. That's it. Okay. So you have to tell in which repository your Argo CD YML file is there and in which path it is available. So let me get the repository URL and here place the repository URL and then revision head path. Where is your Argo CD related YML file? That path you have to provide. Okay, that path you have to provide. So where is that path? It is available in Argo CD and then Argo CD.yml. So you just have to give this directory name or the folder name. So /, you can just give that path /Argo CD. So when you give /, what will happen? It will go into this directory and it will check for the directory called Argo CD. And inside that directory, it will go and do the deployments using Argo CD.yml file. And then cluster URL, let's select the default one, namespace. If you want, you can go with a default namespace. Otherwise, if you want to do the Argo CD deployment in a custom namespace, you can keep it in the custom namespace also. So it's again up to our requirement only. So let's say I want to go with the default namespace. If you want to go with a custom namespace, you just have to create that namespace first. Right, namespace default and done. Let's click on create. So you can see the Ingress. Okay, Ingress app and tech solutions. This is my application. So if you just click on this one, you can see the pods, all these things are in the running state. You see? Okay, so 4 pods are in the running state. Okay, so as soon as you update anything in the deployment.yml file, you have Kubernetes file, no? So in the deployment.yml file, if you update these things, automatically those updates will also happen it here. Those updates will also happen it here. So you can see that thing itself here. So one is related to Ingress and the other one is related to deployment and the other is related to the service. So related to the deployment, we have 2 deployments. One is text solution, you can see it here, the details of this one. You can just click on details and you'll be able to see more details about that. Okay, you can see the summary, all the details. So events, logs, everything you can get it. Okay, you can see logs are live logs you are going to get. Okay, so like this, if you do any changes in any of your deployment YML files, automatically those changes will be replicating here. So if you want to go to applications and go with Ingress app, and here also you are able to see that. Okay, so it will sync automatically because we have synced it explicitly. If you want a manual sync, you just click on a sync here and then click on synchronize, so that sync will happen. Whenever you do any changes in the deployment YML file, automatically those changes will happen here. Right? So that is how you can do the deployments of Kubernetes using Argo CD in a GitOps approach. So this is about how to do the deployment of a microservices application using Ingress controller, and how to do the monitoring of the application using Prometheus and Grafana as the monitoring tools, and how to do the GitOps approach of deployment of the applications in the Kubernetes using Argo CD. So, and as part of this project, we have also covered Helm as well, how to work with Helm. On a light note, I have covered, right? So before I close this entire thing, let me just let you know that the batch which I'm going to start on Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform, it is going to start from August 7th onwards. You can get more details about this batch. So you can see batch is going to start on 7th August. 7th and 8th August, you're going to have the free demo sessions, which you can attend. But if you want to attend the free demos and to receive the link, I want you to register to this program. And in order to register, you can just go to the contact page. I'll just show you that in some time. And these are all the details of the batch. Okay, then the training fee is 6,000 rupees. And you can also see the other details as well. And go to contact page. In the contact page, you can see the enroll now, register, or free demo sessions. Just click on register. Both are the same links only. So you just have to register by providing your email ID and then WhatsApp number and a couple of other details like your name and those things. And then you can also join the WhatsApp group as well, so that you'll be getting to know the updates related to the group, update related to the batch as well. And if you have any questions and if you want to talk to me related to the questions, you can just call to this number. I'll be available to answer your questions. And if you want to know what are all the course modules that I'm going to cover Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and then Argo CD, Terraform. And along with these things, I'm also going to cover OWASP, Trivy, Docker Scout image analysis, which are DevSecOps related tools. And then we are also going to see how to work with Nexus, SonarCube, Tomcat, Nginx, and a couple of other things as well. So those are small things which will come in between these tools only. So that's why I have not mentioned on a large scale. But these are the 4 major modules that we are going to cover: Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform. In the part of Kubernetes, we are going to see the Argo CD in a much detailed way as well. And apart from this training is specifically meant for the real-time projects where you are going to see how to deploy a 3-tier applications, microservices applications, DevSecOps related projects, 2-tier applications only with front-end and back-end, 1-tier application only with front-end. So there are different things that you are going to learn as part of this project. This training program. If you want to verify the success stories of this one, of the batch which completed on June 29, you can just go to this entire thing, and you can also connect me through WhatsApp or directly to the mobile number as well. So I hope you have understood this project, and I assume that you understood few things related to the project and you have gained sufficient knowledge related to how to do the deployments using Ingress controller. So this is all about this particular video. And before I close this video, I want you to share your experience about this video and the project, how it has helped you to enrich your existing knowledge, or how it has added to your existing knowledge using a LinkedIn post. And you can tag me on the LinkedIn post, and you can find my LinkedIn URL also in the description of this video, as well as in the GitHub repository link as well. So in the GitHub repository itself, I will be providing the complete text document where you can find the commands and all that part. But Along with that, I'm also going to provide you the JDK batch 6 registration form as well. JDK means Jenkins, Docker, and Kubernetes. Since I have added Terraform also in this batch for the new batch, which is batch 6. So you can join that batch. You can listen to the free demo classes and you can see whether it is reaching up to your requirement or not. What is the course curriculum? Entire things will be discussed on demo session 1, and on demo session 2 onwards, we are going to start the actual syllabus. So thank you all. Thanks for listening to this video till to the very end.